care and adoption friends. My name is Lauren and this channel is called Lauren Fosters, and I am so excited about this series. We are still on how to get started and where to get started and what getting started looks like. And today's video is all about narrowing down an agency. So a little bit about me, because I know some of you may be joining me for the first time. I am a foster and adoptive mom. We have 10 awesome kids. We have fostered in 3 states. We're military, so we've moved around a lot. So we have seen kind of what different areas have required. And also, I'm former foster youth myself. So I try to take everything from a perspective of both the foster mom and the foster kid. So first things first is kind of understanding that each state will likely have 2 options for you. And one of those options is going directly through the state, so CPS. Another option is going to be going through a private agency. And let me get into that just a little bit more. So CPS is state run. Your area may not even call it CPS. They may call it DFPS or Children's Division or something completely separate. Each state calls it something different because it depends on what that state has decided that that department is going to kind of encompass. So use your search engine, check it out, see what CPS is called in your area, because whatever that department is the department you're going to look for when you're trying to, what we say, go through the state. So go through CPS directly. Your other option, of course, is a private agency, as I already mentioned. And what's a private agency? Well, a private agency is going to either be a for-profit or nonprofit organization that works along with the state, but it's its own organization, its own entity. They do have to follow the same rules as the state, so their to-dos and their expectations are always the same. However, some of the private agencies will tack on a couple more trainings or a couple more expectations or a couple more requirements or rules. Now, don't let that freak you out from private agencies, because we're going to talk about the pros and cons of both. But I do want to say that when agencies tack things on, I promise you it's not because they're trying to be difficult or make things hard. Oftentimes, it's because they really want to make sure that you're well trained and that their children are being placed in safe homes. A little foster care lingo 101, because you're going to hear me refer to licensing from time to time throughout these videos. And what I want you to understand is that licensing may be separate from your agency. So if you're going directly through Children's Division, CPS, DFPS, whatever your area calls that, chances are licensing works very close with them. If you're going through an agency, you're still going to have that same licensing department working with your agency to make sure you get licensed. So once you've kind of narrowed down which you'd prefer, so whether you're going through the state, you're going through CPS, or you're going to choose from a private agency, in a lot of areas you're going to have several to choose from, or in my area we have 1. So it really just depends on the area you live in. If it's a larger area, you're going to have several to choose from. If not, you may only have one other option. So do your research, ask questions. Don't be afraid to start asking other foster parents what their experiences are with some of these agencies. So now I'm going to get into a little bit of the pros and cons of going through the state or going through a private agency. And please realize this is all my opinion. No diss on either. I think they're both awesome options. So you could always try one and then switch to the other later. So when it comes to going directly through the state, I will say that it's a more direct approach. I've noticed it's kind of a no frills approach. They're often the first line of defense when calls start coming in. So if that gives you a little bit of insight about them. And as far as going through a private agency, what I've noticed is 2 things. One that might look like a pro, one that might look like a con. So what you might see as a con is that they can add things onto what licensing initially expects. So they can add some rules. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say you live in an area where licensing is totally fine with you having a trampoline. Your agency might say that's fine for them, but we're not allowing it. So they're allowed to add rules, but they're not allowed to take away rules. So don't be surprised if you see that. Another thing is they may require more training than your state-run agency. But I promise it's not in an effort, once again, to make things more difficult. They want to make sure that their homes are really well trained. They want to make sure that their homes are very, very safe, so that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and everything is where it's supposed to be. But on the pro side of things, I will say that I've noticed that private agencies also do tend to offer a little bit more support. So let's go back to the training thing. I have noticed that private agencies, while all agencies, state-run or private, will give you trauma training, I do believe that private agencies tend to push a little bit more into that and dig a little deeper into that, which I think is awesome. And especially if you're a new foster parent, I would always suggest going through a private agency. I've even had private agencies come out and do pre-walkthroughs before licensing to kind of give me a little heads up, like, hey, you might want to fix that or rethink the way you're doing this. That way we're ready. So they really do try to offer a lot of support. But once again, no diss on either. They're both amazing. So let's go back to, can I switch agencies? So we fostered in 3 states. In all 3 states, you were allowed to switch agencies. I believe that's across the board everywhere. I could be wrong. You can let me know down in the comments below if your state does not allow you to switch agencies, but you should always be allowed to switch agencies. Let's say you're right in the middle and you've gotten about half your trainings done. You should be allowed to take those trainings and carry them to the next agency. And we'll talk about what that looks like in just a minute. But I also want to get to, what if you're already licensed? So like, what if you've gone through the whole process, you're licensed, maybe you even have a placement in your home. Can you switch agencies then? The answer is still yes. Everything should go with you to the next agency and you should not be penalized for it. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's illegal to penalize you for it. My recommendation, if you do decide to switch agencies, would be to contact your new agency and have them handle all the paperwork and the transition. And a lot of times your new agency will even notify your old agency and get everything transferred over for you. But it really depends on the agency. So ask that new agency what they're willing to do to help you out with that. But all that to say, don't feel locked into an agency. And I think that's where I see a lot of would-be foster parents get tripped up, is they think, once I pick this agency, I'm stuck with them for life. And that's just not the case. If you are with an agency and it's just not working out for you, their style is not your style, you're not gelling with them, there's just not something right, or maybe even you just see a new agency open up and you really love their philosophy, so you want to move over to them. You should never be penalized. You should never lose your training. You should never lose your placements. Nothing should be taken from you because you've decided to switch agencies. So take a big breath. All right. So now that pressure is off of you, know that this finding an agency thing can feel so daunting and so grueling, but I promise you, just get started, jump right in, pick the agency. You can always pump the brakes if you need to, fill out that application. And that brings me to my absolute last point for this video, which is something called a paper pregnancy. So let's say you're scared to get started because you're worried that your agency is going to pressure you through the process and really push you along at a rate you're not willing to go because you're really still trying to get your feet wet. It's okay to pump the brakes and say you're not quite ready to move on to the next step. So I had an agency one time say your paper pregnancy can be as long or short as you want it to be. So if you get halfway through that paperwork and you realize you just need a moment to breathe, you need to like really kind of make sure your family's all on the same page with this, it's okay to step back. And a lot of agencies are okay with that. It's okay to go halfway through your training and then tell them you need a month off to really kind of breathe and focus on your family or whatever. If you've got financial concerns or health concerns that pop up, it's okay to take a step back and put some thought into it. And I will tell you that agencies respect that, because what they don't want to see is you rush through getting licensed and then you burn out after your first placement. What they'd rather see is that you get some good training, you take your time, you're really thoughtful about it, and that you really commit when it's time to be licensed. So that's everything I've got for narrowing down an agency. Please comment below. Was it hard for you to narrow down an agency? Was it kind of easy? Does your area have a ton of agencies? Maybe they only have a couple, kind of like my area if you live in a rural area. Let me know in the comments down below. As always, I am cheering you on through Facebook and YouTube and Instagram or wherever you follow me. All right, you have a good rest of your day.
So a little bit about me, because I know some of you may be joining us. So a little bit about me, because I know some of you may be joining us for the first time. So now I'm going to get into a little bit. All right. So you get calling to agencies.